Okay. Hey, everybody. So, we're back on the Christmas podcast here. Beware of Grinches who spoil the true spirit or meaning of Christmas. And, yeah, I'm sorry, but so much for this being brief. This is actually going to be the longest podcast I've done. There was actually just a lot of ground I wanted to cover, so just watch it, when you want to break from the family or whenever you get a chance here around Christmas. But I actually changed rooms as well. It was getting way too cold up there on the porch by the Christmas tree. So I had to come back, and now I'm down here by the fire, so it's nice and warm. But I believe where we left off was I was talking about my atheist and agnostic friends, and some of my friends that aren't as spiritual, and wanted to compare them to my Christian friends, or, for that matter, you don't got to be Christian to be Muslim, Orthodox, Jew, Mormon, Scientologist, whatever floats your boat. Can't forget about the Buddhist or the Hindus either, I guess. But whatever floats your boat as far as religion or spirituality goes, one thing that really aggravates me, that's a pet peeve of mine, is I don't understand why more of my atheist and agnostic friends seem to show more empathy for the poor, and they seem to care more about poor people, both in this country and around the globe. I don't get why the atheists and agnostics show more sympathy than a lot of my Christian friends do. And here again, I think that something's gone awry in our culture with a lot of folks who might have grown up Christian or grown up in the church who got off track at some point, and instead of trying to be more Christ-like and take on some of those traits that Jesus had, I think a lot of folks have, ended up just wanting to make Christ more like themselves, and just kind of wanting to be comfortable at church instead of getting out of their comfort zone. And really, I'm going to focus on Christianity because, like I said, I grew up in the Methodist Church, so that's what I know. That's what more of my background is. So no offense if you come from another faith, or perhaps, like I said, if you're atheist. Everyone's welcome here, and everyone's welcome in this discussion. But I'm going to focus on Christianity since that's what I know. And, it's the main reason I haven't gone to church regularly for a very long time. I really don't feel all that welcome in a lot of the mainstream Christian churches nowadays. And I don't see the emphasis on the needy and the poor. I think if that emphasis was there, that probably a lot more people would be involved in church. And I know I'm not the only one who feels kind of disenfranchised from the mainstream church. When we come to talking about the poor, because I've heard this is a common complaint among other friends and other people I've talked with. I just don't get it. I mean, it's one of the things that why I think they were successful in the South during the Civil Rights era, and one of the reasons I think they were successful in being able to organize all those African Americans and also their friends among white people, and of course all the Northerners and people who came down and helped them on the freedom rides, and some of the sit-ins at lunch counters and marches and everything that they had for equality and for civil rights, not only for African Americans but for all people, and for equal voting rights. They were successful in achieving, getting a lot of what they wanted. And of course, we still have problems with equality in this country, no doubt about that. And but they still were able to get a lot of gains. Martin Luther King and all those good preachers and the students who took part in that movement. And of course, they were a huge part of the civil rights marches down there. Were the young people who joined in, along with a lot of the locals who lived down there, and helping get these people their rights. But they were able to incorporate poverty and caring about the poor and the least among us, really, I think, into that movement all along. And it's one of the reasons they were so successful. And they were also able to, obviously the church was a big part of that movement. And I think that would really help address the issues of poverty today, is if we had more emphasis on it in the church. And if not only sermons or people talking about it, but people going out trying to help the homeless and the needy, and people going out and maybe joining the picket lines with the fast food workers, the Walmart workers, these people. Because, like I said, these are just ordinary working folks. The whole narrative that, well, maybe you should just get a college degree if you don't want to work at Walmart. The bottom line is not everybody's going to have a college degree. Certainly more people have nowadays than used to. But college degree is not necessarily for everyone. And, we got to have those skilled trades. We're always going to have retail, big box stores, and fast food places like McDonald's. So why not pay a little bit more for our products and services to ensure that those people have a living wage, so that we're not having to make up for the gap with our tax money. Because so many of these workers are on Medicaid or on food stamps. I mean, it's really shameful. And I don't know how these big corporations, how they can get any satisfaction out of, most of their workforce having to be on all these forms of welfare. There's a lot of right-wingers, conservative people in this country who get on these big rants about how people need to pull themselves up by their own bootstraps, and they need to work hard and be successful out in the marketplace. Well, how are people supposed to do that when there's a whole class of jobs that's somewhere to 20 to 30% of the economy at least, if not a bigger portion, is service sector jobs? I mean, that's kind of the dominant, largest industry anymore, is the service sector and retail. Whereas it used to be manufacturing. Of course, we've outsourced most of our manufacturing. Free trade has closed down a lot of our factories. A lot of those jobs have been sent to Mexico and China, to the third world. But what I wanted to get back to here is that we've got a growing third world here at home in America. We've got so much economic disparity and a lot of displaced people that, like I said, you are seeing people, a lot of people who are in the age group 18 to 34 who, by all means, are supposed to be independent and be on their own. And they're not able to, because they're not able to find living wage jobs out there. And I mean, I come from having lived independently a number of years, but having to move back with family when I've been laid off, when I've been out of a job too. And the problem is, that's the other problem with our economy, is that, like, even if you do get living wage job, you're able to support yourself, live independently and everything after college, a lot of times people aren't able to keep a good job because, again, because there's hardly no unions around, and they always protected the workers, and they still do, the ones that are still around. But basically, I mean, if you got a bad boss anymore, you find yourself shit out of luck, because there's no one to stick up for you, and there's no one to represent you against management if they're trying to screw you over and throw you out of some place for whatever reason. And that's not right. I don't see how it's good for the employer either, because they're having to just hire new people and spend money on training, spend money training people, and you can take up to a year in a lot of jobs, and more skilled or professional jobs, to train people. But just a couple of more things I wanted to talk about here. But again, getting back to that least among us thing, I just don't get it. I think a lot of people are missing what Jesus talked about in the Gospels, and also a big part behind Christmas, is that it's supposed to be about giving, and it's obviously a community based holiday. It's not about buying as much, fancy goods as you can to spoil your children. It really should be about helping everybody, and a lot of those Christians should be out joining the picket lines with these workers that are trying to get a higher minimum wage. It's not only going to help themselves, and so that they can be self-reliant, sufficient working people, but it's going to help everybody out in the labor market, because if the wage goes up for the people at the bottom of the totem pole there, so to speak, when it comes to wages, the wages go up for them, there's going to be a better labor market. Other employers are going to have to up their wages as well to compete for labor. And so that's going to have an overall positive, a net positive effect on the labor market and also on the economy as a whole, because you're going to have more people who have money that they can spend buying goods and services out in the economy, and more people who are able to afford apartments or buy a home. And so really, those are all good things for our economy. Why in the world we don't have more working people joining the ranks of the folks who are fighting for a living wage? It baffles me. I don't understand why people buy into this propaganda that's out there, that people that still want to make us believe that trickle-down economics work, when obviously time and history in the past 3.5 decades have shown that trickle-down economics are only a good thing for the rich. Tax cuts for the rich only benefit rich people. They don't go out and create good jobs with the increased profits and money that they're taking home, the 1% not putting it back into the economy. Working people do. Working people will spend it to buy goods and services and spend it on things that they need. So, a couple of more things here. Actually, one more piece of scripture I wanted to read to you all. And this one actually is called The Rich Young Man. And it can be found in Matthew 19. And it's right around verses 20 and 21. Actually, we'll start out here, 19, verse 16. Let's try to read through this real quick. Now a man came up to Jesus and asked, "Teacher, what good thing must I do to get eternal life?" "Why do you ask me about what is good?" Jesus replied. "There is only one who is good. If you want to enter life, obey the commandments." "Which one?" the man inquired. Jesus replied, "Do not murder, do not commit adultery, do not steal, do not give false testimony," which means do not lie. "Honor your father and mother, and love your neighbor as yourself." Again, there's love your neighbor as yourself in there. And the man asked, "All these I've kept." The young man said, "What do I still lack?" Jesus replies, "If you want to be perfect, go sell your possessions and give to the poor. You'll have treasure in heaven. Then come follow me." When the young man heard this, he went away sad because he had great wealth. Then Jesus said to his disciples, "I tell you the truth. It's hard for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. Again, I tell you, it's easy for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven." When the disciples heard this, they were greatly astonished, and they asked, "Who then can be saved?" Jesus looked at them and said, "With man this is impossible, but with God all things are possible." So basically what Jesus is saying there, that it's obviously, it's very difficult for a rich man to get into heaven. He says, well, it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle. He's basically just saying that, to whom much is given, much is expected. That's another thing, from the Bible. But that seems to have been, that gets glanced over all the time, I think, in American culture. And a lot of it probably has to do with the economic disparity and the economic inequality that we have, which is at an all-time high. But basically, if you are wealthy, uh, you're supposed to give back to your society and, of course, to charity and to the poor. Um, but, charity is a great thing. It should always be encouraged. But the best form of handout anyone could have is a good job. So bottom line is, if we had more living wage jobs, we'd have a stronger, more robust economy, and more people would both live independently in their own apartments, their own homes, raising their families, but they'd also be able to buy food and all the goods and services, automobile, everything they need to be able to get by on their own. So, yeah, the bottom line is, if you want to do something healthy this Christmas season, instead of focusing on the iPads, the Xbox One, the newish form of Nintendo, whatever that may be, or buying a bunch of stuff at Abercrombie or Bloomingdale's or Macy's or wherever you shop, that's a big part of American culture, so I imagine most of you are probably going to do that anyway. But really, Christmas is more about paying it forward and helping someone who will never be able to repay you. That's really what you can do if you want to do something great this holiday season. And so I think, we touched on the scriptures I wanted to, and this has obviously been a pretty long podcast, but I think it's also a meaningful one because while everything is happening here, especially like with events of last week with the Duck Dynasty guy and all that, I think the true meaning of Christmas does get overlooked and forgotten a lot of times. And so I definitely just wanted to touch on that. And I'd love to hear what you all think. Please reply to my video here on YouTube, or feel free to get in a conversation on Facebook. But happy Christmas. War is over, or at least hopefully we're headed in that direction. And have a happy New Year as well. That's it for this podcast.